The city lights flickered like broken promises. The streets buzzed with impatient footsteps, car horns, and the smell of roasted chestnuts from a nearby vendor that always made her stomach growl. But tonight, she didn't even have the courage to ask for food. Her name was Amara, 14 years old. Skin the shade of polished mahogany, eyes deep pools that seemed to hold secrets too heavy for her young frame. Her hair was matted, tucked beneath a faded hoodie that had once been pink, but now looked more like a memory of color. She clutched a small cardboard sign. "Can I play for food?" Some read it, some didn't, some smirked. A few whispered to each other, as though she was a joke written on a street corner. Nobody stopped to ask what she meant. Nobody cared to know that she wasn't begging for money, only for a chance to show what her hands could do when they touched the piano. But who would believe a girl who slept under bridges and scavenged half-eaten sandwiches from trash bins when she claimed she could play Mozart, Chopin, or even her own melodies? That night, standing outside a luxurious Marlowe theater, she pressed her back against the cold stone wall. A gala was being held inside, a night of music, wine, and glittering gowns. Through the tall glass doors, Amara caught glimpses of women in sparkling dresses and men in tuxedos, their laughter carrying out into chill air. She thought of her mother, before the accident. Her mother's voice had filled their tiny apartment like sunshine. She had been a choir singer in a local church, always humming as she braided Amara's hair, always encouraging her daughter to dream. The piano had belonged to her mother once, an old upright that leaned slightly to the left but sang like heaven when Amara pressed keys. But after the car crash, after the endless hospital bills, after the eviction, there was no piano, no apartment, no mother, only silence. Amara had been on the streets for 6 months now. 6 months of hunger gnawing at her ribs. 6 months pretending not to hear the cruel named strangers toss her way. 6 months of carrying a secret that weighed heavier than hunger. She was a prodigy with nowhere play. As the gala crowd thickened, Amara's stomach twisted. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. A man with a trimmed beard and polished shoes caught sight of her sign and chuckled, nudging his wife. "Play for food," he sneered. "Where you gonna play, little girl?" "A trash can." The wife laughed behind her jeweled hand. They walked away, leaving Amara's cheeks burning, her eyes stinging with tears she refused to let fall. But then, something happened. Through the golden light spilling from the Marlowe Theater doors, Amara spotted a grand piano, black, gleaming, perfect. It stood on the stage like a king waiting for its crown. She froze, her heart hammering. For the first time in months, she felt alive. She whispered to herself, "If I could just touch those keys," but security guards lined the entrance. Rich people in silk and diamonds filed in, their laughter too loud, their perfume too sweet. Who would let a homeless girl sit at a grand piano in a place like that? Still, Amara stayed. She leaned against the wall, eyes fixed on the instrument, as if her gaze alone could summon it closer. And though no one knew it yet, the night was about to change everything. The gala inside the Marlowe Theater sparkled like another world. Chandeliers dangled from the ceiling, lights spilling across marble floors that seemed too perfect for footsteps. Waiters in white gloves carried trays of champagne. Laughter echoed against the high arches, and the promise of music hung in the air. Amara watched it all from the street, her stomach aching with hunger, but her heart aching more for the piano. Every polished note that would soon come from that stage felt like it was meant for her fingers. But reality snapped back when a guard barked. "Move along, kid. This isn't a shelter." She lowered her sign, biting her lip. For a moment, she considered running, finding another alley to curl into, another night of cold bones and emptiness. Yet her feet didn't move. Her eyes kept clinging to that piano inside. The universe, it seemed, wasn't entirely cruel that night. As one of the stagehands rushed out, carrying crates of bottled water, the side door of the theater swung wide open. The man balanced too many boxes, struggling to keep them steady. In that brief chaos, nobody noticed a thin girl slipping through the shadows. Amara's heart pounded as she slipped into the backstage hallway. The carpet muffled her footsteps. The walls smelled faintly of dust and perfume. She pressed her back against the wall, breathing in shallow gasps, her body trembling with both fear and a strange surge of hope. And then she saw it, the stage. The grand piano stood beneath the glow of golden spotlights, its polished black surface shining like a mirror. She could almost hear it calling her name. She stepped closer, barefoot on the carpet, every nerve in her body screaming with disbelief. Her fingers itched. Her soul screamed. Just one note, she thought, just one touch. But before she could step onto the stage, a mocking voice cut through the silence. Well, what do we have here?" Amara spun around. A group of teenage girls in gowns stood near the curtains, holding champagne flutes they were far too young to be drinking. Their jeweled bracelets glittered, and their eyes glimmered with cruel amusement. "Lost street rat?" one of them sneered, taking a slow sip. I just wanted to," Amara stammered, clutching her hoodie tight. "Wanted to what?" Another girl mocked, her lips curling. "Steal the silverware?" Or maybe you think you belong on that piano. The laughter stabbed deeper than hunger ever could. I can play, Amara whispered, her voice shaking but firm. The girls exchanged glances, then burst out laughing. Play? You? What, like banging your hands on a trash can lid? Amara's cheeks burned, but she lifted her chin. I can really play. Better than anyone here. For a moment, there was silence. Then the leader of the group smirked and said, All right then, prove it. Come on, Prodigy. They pulled her by the arm toward the piano, their laughter echoing across the empty stage. One of them signaled a nearby stagehand, who looked confused but too intimidated by the wealthy girls to intervene. Amara's knees trembled as they shoved her onto the bench. The keys gleamed beneath her shaking hands. She hadn't touched a piano in 6 long months. What if she had forgotten? What if her fingers betrayed her? The girls snickered from behind her. One pulled out her phone, already recording. This'll be gold on TikTok. Homeless girl crashes gala. Thinks she's Mozart. The laughter rang in her ears. Amara closed her eyes. And then she remembered her mother's voice, her mother's hands guiding hers on the old upright piano back in their tiny apartment. The smell of cornbread baking on Sundays. The way her mother would say, Play like you're telling your story, baby. The keys are your voice. Her trembling stopped. Her fingers fell on the keys. The first notes came soft, uncertain, like footsteps in the dark. Then stronger. Then alive. The music poured out of her like a river breaking through a dam. Haunting, tender, fierce. It wasn't just playing. It was confession, prayer, rebellion. The girl stopped laughing. The stagehand froze. The grand piano came alive under her touch, filling the empty theater with something raw and beautiful. It was as if every ounce of hunger, every night of cold, every cruel laugh she had endured had turned into sound. By the time she struck the final note, the air itself felt heavier, as if even silence bowed to her. The girls didn't laugh. They didn't mock. One of them had tears in her eyes. And Amara, chest heaving, looked up at them with fire in her gaze. I told you, I can play. But just as her hope flickered bright, a voice boomed from the back of the theater. What is going on here? A man in a tailored suit stepped forward, his face stern, his presence commanding. The theater's director. Amara's heart stopped. Her secret was no longer a secret. The director's shoes clicked sharply against the polished stage floor as he approached. His face was stone, jaw tight, eyes narrowed, his neatly combed gray hair shining under the spotlight. What is this? His voice carried authority, the kind that could silence a room. The girls shrank back, fumbling with their glasses. We were just, having fun, one of them stammered. Fun. The director's gaze shifted to Amara, still seated at the piano, her hands trembling above the keys. Who is she? Why is a stranger touching my Steinway? I'm sorry, Amara whispered, her throat dry. I didn't mean to. She's just some homeless girl who sneaked in. One of the girls interrupted quickly, eager to escape blame. We caught her, but she said she could play. So we. The director's eyes flicked between Amara and the trembling girls. His lips pressed into a hard line. You think this is a playground? He barked. This instrument is worth more than your entire life. Young lady, do you understand that? Amara swallowed, her chest aching. I wasn't going to hurt it. I just wanted to play. Want to play? The director's voice dripped with disdain. You don't just sit at a grand piano like this because you want to. Do you realize the hours, the years, the dedication it takes to deserve the seat? Tears pricked at her eyes, but she held them back. I know, she whispered. I've been playing my whole life. I can. Enough. His voice boomed, echoing through the empty theater. The girls flinched. You've already disrupted rehearsal. Get out before I have security drag you into the street. Amara's breath caught in her chest. She looked down at her hands, still resting on the keys, as though they belonged there. She wanted to scream, to tell him she had no home to go back to. That music was the only thing she had left. But the words tangled in her throat. She stood slowly, her legs weak. But then the stagehand, the one who had seen everything, stepped forward. Sir, she can play. You should have heard her. The director turned sharply. What? She played like I've never heard before. The stagehand said, his voice low but steady. It wasn't a joke. She's the real thing. The director studied Amara again, his eyes colder than steel. Play something. Now. Amara froze. This wasn't how she wanted it. Not with the laughter of rich girls still echoing in her ears. Not with her stomach growling from hunger. Not under the glare of a man who looked like he'd rather see her gone. But then she remembered her mother's words. The keys are your voice. Speak, even if the world doesn't want to listen. She sat back down. Her fingers hovered. And then she began. This time, she didn't play with hesitation. She unleashed everything. The haunting sorrow of nights on the street. The tenderness of her mother's lullabies. The anger at being invisible. The hope that still stubbornly flickered inside her. The music rose and fell like waves against cliffs, storm and sunshine tangled into one. It wasn't polished perfection. It was raw, alive, unforgettable. The director's expression didn't change, but his eyes softened almost imperceptibly. The girls behind her were silent, no longer mocking. When the last note faded, Amara's chest heaved. Her hands shook, but her gaze was steady. "I told you," she whispered. "I can play." For a long moment, silence hung heavy. Then the director exhaled sharply. "You have technique," he said, his tone clipped. "Emotion, too. But technique and emotion without discipline are nothing." Amara's heart sank. "Come back tomorrow at noon," he added. "If you're serious, prove it then. If not, don't waste my time." Her breath caught. "You mean? I'm not in the business of charity," he snapped. "But talent deserves to be tested. Don't expect kindness. Don't expect food or shelter. Expect work." And with that, he turned on his heel, barking orders to the stagehands as if the matter was closed. Amara sat frozen, unsure if she'd just been given a gift or a curse. The girls slipped away silently, their cruel laughter gone, replaced by a heavy shame they didn't know how to wear. The stagehand gave Amara a small, encouraging nod. And Amara, for the first time in months, she had something that wasn't hunger or cold or loneliness. She had a chance. The morning sun stretched across the city, gilding cracked sidewalks and glittering on windows Amara could never dream of living behind. She had barely slept, curled up on a bench with her hoodie pulled tight against the chill. The director's words echoed in her mind all night. "Come back tomorrow at noon. Prove it." She didn't know why he had given her the chance. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe pity, or maybe he had heard something in her playing that even she didn't understand. By noon, Amara stood at the theater steps, her stomach hollow but her eyes alive. She looked out of place among the neat lines of concertgoers waiting for rehearsal tickets. A few people glanced at her and wrinkled their noses, whispering, but she didn't move. She was here for one reason. When the clock struck 12, the stagehand from last night appeared at the side entrance and waved her in. Inside, the theater was brighter, noisier. Musicians tuned their instruments, stagehands adjusted lights, and the air buzzed with preparation. The director stood near the piano, clipboard in hand, his sharp eyes scanning the room. "You came," he said as though surprised. Amara nodded. Her throat was too dry to speak. "Sit," he commanded, gesturing to the piano bench. "You have one chance. If you fail, that's it." Her hands trembled as she lowered herself onto the bench. For a moment, she froze. The theater was no longer empty. A handful of musicians had stopped their tuning, curious. The stagehands paused. Even the director's assistant leaned closer. All eyes were on her. She closed her eyes. She thought of her mother's laughter, the smell of cornbread, the sound of their old upright piano, singing in their tiny apartment. She thought of the hunger that had nearly broken her, the laughter of the girls who mocked her, the night sky that had been her only ceiling for months. And then she played. This wasn't just music. It was her story poured into sound. Notes cascaded like rain, heavy with grief but sparkling with hope. Her fingers danced with precision, then pounded with rage, then softened into whispers of forgiveness. She wasn't playing for food anymore. She was playing for her mother, for her survival, for every invisible soul on the street who had been laughed at and ignored. The theater fell silent. Every ear bent toward her, every heart tightened with each rising swell of her song. By the time the final chord echoed into silence, tears had fallen down her own cheeks, and down others too. A violinist wiped her eyes. Even a stagehand clapped a hand over his mouth. The director didn't move for a long moment. His clipboard hung at his side. Finally, he exhaled, slow and deliberate. "You're not just good," he said, his voice low but steady. "You're extraordinary." The words didn't feel real. Amara blinked at him, her breath caught. "I'll make some calls," he continued. "There's a scholarship program at the conservatory. If you want it, I'll recommend you. But understand this, it won't be easy. You will work harder than you've ever worked. Talent opens the door. Discipline keeps it open." Amara's lips parted, trembling. I don't have a home." The director's face softened just slightly. He nodded toward his assistant. "We'll arrange something temporary. Food, shelter, but only if you commit yourself. Do you understand?" For the first time in months, Amara felt warm flood her chest that had nothing to do with the sun or a blanket. It was hope, real, solid, glowing. "I'll work," she whispered fiercely. "I'll do whatever it takes." The director gave a curt nod. Then, "Welcome to your new life." Weeks later, the world began to whisper about the homeless girl pianist. Videos had surfaced online, recorded by the same girls who once mocked her. Except now, those videos weren't a joke. They had gone viral. Millions had seen her play. Millions had cried watching her story unfold through the keys. Concert halls began calling. Reporters wanted interviews. But through it all, Amara stayed grounded. She studied, practiced, and worked harder than anyone at conservatory. And one evening, standing on the stage of a packed theater, no longer wearing a faded hoodie but a simple, elegant dress, she looked out at the sea of faces. She thought of her mother. She thought of the night she had begged strangers with a cardboard sign, "Can I play for food?" And then she smiled, sitting before the grand piano. "This," she whispered, "is for all the ones the world doesn't see." Her fingers touched the keys, and the world finally listened. Now read this story and create an attractive image about this story, which I use in thumbnail and in video.